Hi, I'm Brian Woodbury, and you're watching the podcast where nostalgia comes alive. It's Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. Roll it!
Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. Join Jake and his friends on a journey through pop culture of the past, where they interview professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and so much more. Who will they be chatting with today? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. Happy Hero, thank you for joining. As always, I'm your host, Jake Duffenbaugh. With me today, as always, our co-hosts, Chris Bixby and Matt Bingle. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Hi everybody, how are you, Jake?
Doing great, Matt. Thank you for asking. Chris, what do we have for today?
Today's guest is a puppet designer and builder who is best known for designing puppets for series such as Bear in the Big Blue House and It's a Big, Big World. He is also best known for founding the puppet company Puppet Heap, which is responsible for handling the Muppets characters and so much more that we'll touch base on later. Please welcome Paul Andrejco. Paul, happy to have you here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes.
Delighted to have you.
Absolutely.
Talk to you guys in person. I've watched your podcast.
Wow,
A lot of my pals on that show, so it's nice to be joining them.
Nice.
Wonderful. We are very delighted to have you.
Thank you very much.
Nice. So to kick this off, could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Okay. I am a puppet designer, a character designer for mainly for puppets, and I design characters for film, television, and that's what we do here. We design and fabricate puppets for film, television, and theater.
Nice.
And I'm also a filmmaker. I make short films and like to tell stories with puppets. That's what I do.
Nice.
Best way to do it.
That's great. So, what was your childhood like, and how did you grow up?
I grew up out in New Jersey, outside of, in various places actually. I grew up outside of Trenton, New Jersey. I was kind of an introverted kid, a little bit of a loner, nerdy kid. I liked playing in the woods and in abandoned factories and things like that. My father was an engineer, and my mother was she did a lot of things, but she was a homemaker. She was very crafty. She had a sewing business, and that's kind of how I grew up.
Nice.
Interesting. So I'm curious, did you always want to design and build puppets?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of I was born in 1969. That's the year Sesame Street came out, and growing up, there was all kinds of puppets on TV and in film. They were all over the place, and it's from an early age what I really wanted to do. I was inspired by of course, everything the Henson Company did and Jim Henson did, and also Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Oh yeah, classic.
Rabid of the neighborhood of make-believe, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and like I said, my mom was really crafty, so she would help me make puppets. I tried to make a lot of puppets as a kid. I used to make them mostly out of paper, but she could sew, and so she would help me make plush versions of them from time to time. But as I got older, though, I got interested in in computers, sort of like in the mid 80s. Sort of the personal computer was like a new thing, and I was learned to code, and started getting interested in that and making computer generated art and things like that at the time. So that was sort of a thing that I thought I would do for some time. And hooked up with some puppet builders there, some puppet companies there. So there's this guy, Erminio Pinque, and he owns a company called Big Nazo Puppets, which was near the school that I went to. And he would make these giant foam rubber puppets. And I really got into it, and it sort of brought me back to my childhood again, sort of making puppets. And I sort of got into doing that. And then I also trained with his mentor, Mark Kohler. And then I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. So.
Absolutely. So how did that kind of transition into first starting your work with the Jim Henson Company?
Oh, well, that's a strange story, because you know, when I graduated college, Jim Henson had just passed away. So, and I had thought that I would love to work there, because they had, at the time, when I was in college, they came out with the Storyteller series, and I thought that was really,
yeah.
and I was trying to make puppets of my own. And so when I graduated, I did send them my resume and my portfolio, but Jim had just died there in 1990, and I graduated in 1991. And I really didn't think anything would happen. I didn't think they were doing anything. So I was traveling around the country looking for work in the field of puppetry somewhere, in various puppet theaters. I was in Chicago and Tennessee, and spent a little time in Los Angeles. And finally I was in Atlanta, where the Center for Puppetry Arts is. I'm sure you're aware of that place.
Oh yeah.
So I was going to do an internship there. Yeah. So I interviewed with them, and I was going to do an internship, and it doesn't pay. So I was looking for a job as a waiter or something to do the thing. And I remember, I was at the Holiday Inn Hotel, and I called my mom, and I said, well, hey Mom, I don't think I'm coming back. I'm going to do an internship here. And she's like, well, okay, but you got a call from a Tim Jansen or something like that. I'm like, what? The Jim Henson Company? Oh yeah, that's it. And I was like Tim Miller or something. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, well, they got your resume, and they want to interview you. And I was like, oh my God. So I hopped on the first bus I could and went back to New York and did the interview. And a couple weeks later, they did eventually hire me. So that's kind of how that happened. So that sort of represents kind of a schism in my life, away from theater and into, film and television.
Nice.
If I'd stayed at Atlanta, I would probably be more involved with theater.
No, I'm sure. So, one of your earliest projects with them was the 1992 film The Muppet Christmas Carol, of course based off of the novel by Charles Dickens. Could you talk about your involvement in that film?
Oh, well, that was the reason they hired me. That's what they were working on. They were beginning production on that, which I think was the first big thing since Jim died. So it was a big deal. And they were kind of, breathing life back into the company again. So it was a really interesting time to be there. So I was really just an assistant. I was an assistant to Tim Miller. So I was like cutting out foam for him and learning the ropes. But the good thing about that was I could draw, right? Like, so I had this art school background, so I was able to contribute my character designs to that film when they were looking for it. So I contributed a bunch of designs to A Muppet Christmas Carol, and the one they chose was Old Joe, and that got to be my first character that ever made it to the screen.
Oh,
So
nice.
an exciting time.
Nice.
That's great. I mean, yeah, Muppet Christmas Carol, love that film. Such a classic.
It's a really good film. Like,
yeah.
It really doesn't get the credit it deserves, but it's really a well-made film.
Oh, yeah, I still watch it every every Christmas.
Me too.
It's still a
So
tradition.
great.
You too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Best adaptation of A Christmas Carol, in my personal opinion.
It is. It really is. It's really, like, I just think Brian did a great job directing that.
Absolutely.
And it was it was it was certainly a struggle for the kids,
Oh, I'm
trying to
sure.
keep the company going so soon after Jim died. But
Yeah.
but I think with that movie they did well. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, now another Muppets project you worked on was a Muppet Classic Theater as a part of the Muppet Workshop. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can tell you a little bit about it. I mean, that was a Muppet Classic Theater. I made Yeah, I was working on the New York side. They shot it in LA. And I think I built the Big Bad Wolf for that
Oh,
one.
okay.
That was designed by Michael Frith. I didn't design it, but I built it. That was a fun one to work on because he had this like chest that was he was supposed to inflate his chest, and like a lot of time trying to figure out how we would do that. And I know the mech department made like this big like metal cage that you put your hand through that could like expand. And what ended up happening was we just took a rod and attached it to a piece of foam under his costume and just pushed it up, and it was fine. So sometimes the simplest idea is the best.
Nice.
Nice. So you also worked in the Muppet Workshop for the short-lived series Muppets Tonight. What was working on that like?
Oh, that's another one where I wasn't in LA when they shot it, but I did work in the workshop during pre-production when they were developing characters. And one of the fun things about that project was that they had ideas for characters, and they sort of opened it up to the workshop in general to just play around with different forms of puppets to try to develop new designs. So it wasn't just designed on paper, but we actually designed it just by goofing around and experimenting with things. And that was really a fun process, because you normally get to do that. Normally it goes through a process of writing and drawing, and then it comes to the workshop, and then we build whatever's approved. But in this case, they sort of opened the field up for us to just experiment with a lot of different things. And we did some really crazy stuff that a lot of it didn't make it to the screen, but it was fun to work on anyway. I mean, one of the characters that came out of that was Pepe the King Prawn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that was built and designed by Eric Engelhart, who since passed away at a very young age, tragically. Uh, but but that's a good example of he was just goofing around with a weird mechanism that could move its head in a funny way, and he came up with this strange four-armed character that eventually became a prawn. It wasn't a prawn to begin with, but sort of brilliantly made. I think I had a character in there, a vulture. I made a vulture for the animal show that was revamped as the announcer for Muppets Tonight. So
Oh, nice.
revamped him.
Hmm.
They made
Nice.
him.
Nice. So, some of your best known puppet design work includes designing all the characters for Bear in the Big Blue House. How did you kind of begin working on that show?
Oh, well, that was yeah, so at that point I was beginning to be known as a designer in the shop. So I was not just a puppet builder, but they were all do design work. And Mitchell Kriegman had just started working at the Henson Company as a writer and a showrunner. And I don't know, they called me into the office there, and they just said, "Hey, here's Mitchell, and we're trying to work on ideas for this bear character." And I had some ideas that were a little bit out of left field, as compared to what was being presented to him, and so we kind of hit it off. And so that's kind of how that started. Um, uh, that's how we began working on the show. With
Nice.
literally a napkin drawing.
Yeah, I love Bear. Such a great show.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm really proud of having worked on that show. It's really unique. You really haven't seen anything like it since. I really kudos to Mitchell for producing that.
For sure.
Absolutely wonderful show. Because honestly, you've done so many designs for the show. So I was wondering, do you like in general, do you have any like favorite bear characters you got to design?
Uh, well, bear.
Well, I mean,
Bear.
yeah.
No, I think what I'm most proud of with the bear character, is that it's very much in keeping with even though he's a full body suit character, it's very much in keeping with a lot of the lessons we learned from Jim Henson. Like Jim kind of invented this idea of seeing and building puppets specifically through the camera lens, specifically for the lens. And Bear is built that way. That's the way Bear is approached. And he is a character that he kind of doesn't look right if you see him in person. He kind of looks like a big furry starfish, like he's just a strange looking, he has a tiny head and these like tiny feet. But his when you look at him through the lens, and they shoot it with a pretty wide angle lens, his whole form kind of comes together the way it should. So he is designed specifically for the camera lens, which I really like. I really think that came out well. And there's a whole team of us who worked on it. So, but other than Bear, my two favorites are Tutter and Doc Hogg. I really like.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah,
because
that's great.
They echo Bear's design in their shape. Like Tutter is a little bit shaped like Bear. He has a little bit of a fig shape, and so does Doc Hogg. He's kind of they like kind of are iterations of the same sort of fig shaped character. So I kind of like that.
Nice.
Absolutely. So, because Bear is a full body puppet, how would you kind of compare designing full body Muppets to the smaller Muppets like Tutter and Ojo and Doc Hogg?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's similar because on the one hand, when you're designing a puppet for your hand, you're really considering what your hand can do and how your hand is interacting with the object that's around it. But for costume characters, a little more challenging because you're dealing with a whole body. And I have to say, I learned a lot from the team at the Henson Workshop. So, like Connie Peterson and her team. And early on in my time there, I spent a lot of time modeling walk-around suits, and I guess inexpensive enough at the time, just starting out, where I could spend the day standing in one of these suits while they made adjustments. And I was in like the Ghost of Christmas Present while they were building it. I was in all the dinosaurs costumes because they were producing dinosaurs at that time.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And I was working, and not just Connie, but I was working with Nikki Lyons. Anyway, it is a big challenge because you have to get the human body not only to fit in there, but to be able to move.
Exactly.
In a way, and you're also kind of marrying the anatomy of a human being to that of the designed character. So it's not like one to one, like when Noel moves his legs inside Bear, it's not just Noel's leg that's moving, but it's the bear's leg that's sort of being pushed along with it, because the bear's leg is built, has a different anatomy to it. And his legs are attached to like Noel wears kind of a saddle inside, so that because Bear's center of gravity is much lower than a normal person, so there's a special saddle built on the inside that so when Noel sits down on a chair or on the ground or something, Noel is actually sitting in this saddle, and it's the saddle that's on the ground, that's the bear's butt. So there are all of these things like that inside the costume that kind of make it like a puppet that's around the body, but not necessarily fitting tightly to the body at every point. So it's kind of interesting to approach it that way. Um, I have this character over here. His head is missing.
Huh.
Oh, interesting.
Here's his head.
Oh, nice.
But he,
Okay.
so he's a
Okay.
completely different shape, and his
Nice.
arms are a lot longer than mine. He's the Heap. His name is the Heap. And I actually don't, my body, I wear this costume, and my body is like through the costume, through the character, not in the character per se. So
Right.
it's a sort of very interesting kind of like thought process to sort of meld the design and your body together. And there's all sorts of weird things that we try. A lot of it doesn't work, and it's fun. And it's cool to like to then think of it as a performer. You have to really get out of yourself,
Oh, yeah.
not just you moving, you're moving a character. So as I'm sure you know, like we very often have like the video feed inside, so we can see the character from the outside and literally perform that way. We don't perform from the inside out, we perform sort of from the outside in, so we can see how the character is coming across as the audience would see it. So I think that's an interesting thing. And I think, like what's also, I think Andy Serkis went through the same thing when he was performing Gollum,
Ah,
because he, once he started to, because at first they were just sort of motion capturing Andy Serkis, right? But then eventually they kind of gave him a video feed, and the technology got better, and he could sort of see his character in real time, and he started to see Gollum, the animated character, on screen as he performed it. And he got out of himself and started to understand the character a bit more. And it was sort of, when he arched his back, Gollum would arch his back in a Gollum way, like in a different way than he does. And so I think it's really cool to think that like the fundamental aspects of this work are the same, whether you're working with a physical character or a CG character. So like we do some stuff with digital characters and things like that. So it's sort of, to me, it's really interesting to get to find that radical core of what it is that you're working on.
definitely. And going back to Noel, because you mentioned Noel, he did such a wonderful job with Bear,
Oh, he made
Oh my
Bear happen.
gosh, yes.
for
Yeah,
sure.
it was, I don't know if he told you this, but there was an audition process for the Bear. And normally, at the Henson Company, they don't really do auditions. They just know all the performers and they just kind of assign somebody. But Mitchell insisted that they do auditions, which was great because it really gave a lot of people like Noel, who hadn't really had a chance to sort of break into the Henson inner circle, as it were,
Right.
to show their stuff. So I can't tell you, there's like this whole conga line of people, performers coming in going like, "Oh, hello there, I'm a big old bear. How you doing?"
Exactly,
And
yeah.
it's like its
Yeah.
usual thing. And Noel comes in and he's just like, "Hi, how are you? My name's Bear. Come on inside." And it was just totally normal. And it was
I know.
great. It's like a revelation. It's like, wow, here's a bear that we can really relate to. He's just a normal guy. I
Yeah.
trust him. And he just made it happen. And I think that
For
really
sure,
gives
yeah.
it really gives you insight into the process, because it's not just writing a character, it's not just designing a character, it's also performing the character, and it's also filming the character, and it's also, the context in which he exists. Like, it's all of us sort of come together and sort of create this thing. But Noel was really the heart and soul of that guy.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, what went into designing characters for the Adventures of Elmo and Grouchland?
Uh Elmo and Grouchland was, I don't remember a whole lot about that. That wasn't really my show. That was Ed Christie did most of the designs for that. And he's brilliant. He's a brilliant artist. He was my supervisor at the time. I designed the chicken on that one, I believe.
Okay. The one
And I
that
did,
Dave Goels played?
yeah.
Right,
Okay.
okay.
Nice.
Nice.
I mean, when I designed him, he didn't have any lines in the script. He was just this crazy, like Jurassic Park chicken. that was running through, but eventually they gave him a character.
Uh,
But yeah, I did some other stuff for that didn't really make it to the screen. A lot of the work that you do in this field doesn't make it on screen.
uh,
But it was mostly Ed Christie. Ed is a great puppet artist and great puppet builder. He built Luna, the moon, on Bear, and he sculpted the face for Ghost of Christmas Present.
oh,
So he's great. Yeah, he's
nice.
I think he's tired now, but
That's awesome. So now you also contributed to the design of Bozark for the Henson series Animal Jam. Can you talk a bit about that?
yeah, that was a little bit after my time working there. I had they hired me later to do the design work for that. So I wasn't really unfortunately wasn't in the shop when that was being built. And I know that was a little bit of a lower budget show. So I know they were Connie and her team were pushing that out pretty fast. Yeah, I designed a bunch of dancing animals. A dancing sloth and a dancing something else. I can't remember the other thing, but yeah, and the elephant. I was sort of hoping that he would have he would be a little more dynamic than he was. Like, I really wanted to get his like huge butt twerking, and like, I mean, he came out pretty cool anyway. It was a cool show. I mean,
Oh yeah, very
they
energetic
shot
show.
it like live in a theme park or something, like,
Yeah.
like real kids were there, and that was cool. That was fun. But he did get the trunk going. He like spin
Oh
that
yeah,
trunk.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Wow,
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. So, moving on from your work with Henson, you also designed characters for the VS series. It's a big, big world. What was working on that like?
Well, my involvement in that show was very early on, and I was still working actually at Mitchell Kriegman's company, Shadow Projects, and I was running his shop called Shadow Character Design, which was part of Shadow Projects. And he was in the process of developing this show, which was to take place in a treehouse, and so I did a bunch of designs for that. I designed Snook and Madge the turtle. They made it into the show. I did a bunch of monkeys and things like that, and some birds that didn't quite make it. There was a different design for that, but that was mainly a designer. Chris Renault was the main designer on that show, and Chris went on to do Despicable Me. He directed all the Despicable Me movies.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, little
Oh,
plug
wow.
for my friend Chris, Despicable Me 4 coming out.
That's right.
But yeah, he and I worked together at Shadow Projects for a little while.
Nice.
Yeah. The puppets were built by in Montreal by Jean-Guy White. So contribution was very early, and then a bunch of other people worked on it.
Gotcha.
So, in addition to designing puppets for various projects, you of course founded the puppet design company Puppet Heap. What kind of gave you the idea to start Puppet Heap?
Well, the name Puppet Heap is something that I had been using for years. I was, living in a little apartment in Hoboken, here in Hoboken, and I had a big pile of puppets, little projects I've been working on the side that was filling my living room, and so I started I started my own little called Puppet Heap, and I would do like Punch and Judy shows in the park and things like that. And I had my own little films that I was working on the side. But so that was how the name came about. But starting the shop, I didn't really start it as a formal company until like 2004. And that kind of came about because I was freelancing a lot. I was designing a lot of characters, and a lot of people were interested in making puppet television shows at that time. So I was pretty busy. And then there was always the question of, well, who's going to build these things, right? And I would just recommend my friends or whatever, like, well, there's some puppet builders, or and uh so it got to the point where one point I was hired by my friend Matt Brooks to work on Greg the Bunny. We were just making some puppets for Greg the Bunny. I was in his apartment on the Lower East Side there in New York and Manhattan, above Love Saves the Day. All that's gone now. There was a huge fire and it all burned down. But
wow, that's unfortunate.
It's unfortunate. Yeah, Love Saves the Day was great, and Matt was like devastated when that happened. But we pulled together and supported him through it. And that was a long time ago. But in any case, I was sitting on his couch there and then was stitching away, sewing up Greg the Bunny, and we were listening to the Ramones, and it was really happy. I was really happy. I'm just like, this is great. Like, this is what a workshop should be. And Matt agreed, and we were just sort of talking about that. And I said, we should really start something. I'm getting a lot of interest. There are a lot of, once I design these projects, like, they're going to get produced, we should start for a while. He ultimately decided that he didn't want to take sort of the financial risk of it, and it is a risky thing to do. So I ended up just founding it on my own, but he was a big part of it in the beginning. And I think he's in Oregon now. But yeah, like he and another friend of mine, Ron Binion, who's great puppet artist as well.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Did you talk to him?
Not yet, no.
No.
Oh, you should get in touch with him. He's
Oh yeah.
he has a lot of really interesting things to say about the art of puppetry. He's
Yeah,
just brilliant.
because he did things like Book of Pooh and Lazy Town and a
Absolutely.
whole bunch of
yeah.
wonderful things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I worked with when I worked with him at the Henson Company, and I worked with him at Shadow Projects, and then he came and worked with me for a few years early on. And yeah, he's really talented guy. Yeah, but that's kind of how it started. And then after that, it was we're still here. 20 years later, we're still here. So
Nice.
Yay.
Absolutely.
That's great. So now, do you remember what your first project under a Puppet Heap?
it's the first projects. We had well, we did a bunch of interesting projects in the beginning, but the very first one was a show for Rosie O'Donnell, actually. And Rosie O'Donnell was collaborating with Kevin Clash.
I love
yeah.
those appearances.
Yeah.
I love Kevin.
Yeah.
He's a great performer.
Yeah, he is an intense guy. And so he was working with Rosie O'Donnell, and he, eventually got in touch with me, and I was doing some design work for that. And we actually were building the puppets, but this was before I even had a shop. Like, basically, Puppet Heap was just a phone number. So I was running around to Matt's house and to Tim's house and to a bunch of other people's workshops and garages while these puppets were being built. And it was exhausting. But that's how that started. But eventually we did shortly after that, we did start a shop, but the project never went forward. It was scrapped for I don't know what reason, but maybe probably financial reasons usually. But yeah, that was the first project.
Nice.
Interesting. So since 2006, Puppet Heap has worked with Disney by building and maintaining the Muppet characters. No pressure. How did that kind of come about?
Oh, well, that was after I started the shop, there were a lot of things. It was a little chaotic in Muppet Land at that time. They were producing the Muppets Wizard of Oz,
Mm-hmm.
But they were also closing up shop in Manhattan. Like they were selling the buildings in Manhattan and moving things, moving the Sesame Street workshop to Queens and everything else to LA. So things were in a little bit of an upheaval. And there were Disney execs running around, things like that. And some of the project we're also working on this Muppets Wizard of Oz project. So I found myself just like running into the odd Disney executive, and I started to hear that they were looking for a puppet workshop, and which was weird. It was weird to be in the Henson building and hear Disney say, "We're looking for a puppet workshop." I'm like, "Well, you're standing in one." But in any case, they were looking, and so what they were really looking for was, what they told me was, some builders for their Baby Einstein property, that they had acquired Baby Einstein and they were doing like Einstein buddies,
Oh wow.
Einstein pals or something like that. So I'm like, yeah, I'm just starting my shop, so sign me up. So we were working on that, and while we were working on that, I was hearing that, oh, where they're looking for, somebody to handle the Muppets, for whatever reason. And oh yeah, we talked about it a lot in the shop, and there was a lot of debate as to whether or not that would be a good idea. Like, it was kind of a big, scary job, and we were also worried about, like, well, doesn't the Henson Company, shouldn't they be doing that, or what have you? But Disney was definitely looking for another shop, so we threw our name in the ring, and it was a long, drawn out process. It was not an easy thing to negotiate. I wanted to make sure that everything was above board, and so I spoke to a lot of my colleagues, in and out of the Henson Company. And you don't want to sort of betray your past in any way, but you also don't want to ignore the mother of all puppet jobs, so eventually we did it. A lot of my colleagues and a lot of the people who work for me also have a lot of Muppet experience, so I think that really helped us. um, so it was not easy. It was kind of a rough start. They delivered like over 500 boxes of puppets, and they just dumped them in our shop and said, "Okay, good luck." And
Wow.
it was a lot to sort through, but I mean, it's worked out well so far. I mean, we've been
Oh
at it for
yeah,
8 years now. I mean, we've been doing it a long time.
Yeah, it was
absolutely.
it was an interesting time too because the Muppets have been bought by Disney at that point, like not that long before. So it
Yeah.
was a really interesting time to begin with, even before
Oh
Muppets
yeah.
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I mean, they just, there was a lot of question about like how they would handle it and what they would be doing with it,
Oh yeah.
and even just like, for our part, just the processes of maintaining these characters, or showing up to a shoot, or organizing the inventory and all of these, keeping them in good repair, and then pulling them out of
Mhm.
the box, and like they're saying, okay, we need Scooter for this next thing, and you find Scooter and it's like rotting away, and you're just like, oh my God, we need a new Scooter. What did he used to look like? And then you look back and you're like, well, he looked a bunch of different ways. Sometimes his head was like this, and sometimes it was like that, and sometimes he was darker, and sometimes he was lighter. So
Mm.
we have to do this like forensic puppet building. Like we got to sort of look back and iterations of the character and how he's looked over the years, and talk to Disney about it and say, okay, what what is the approved look of this character? So we would really sort of help with the art direction of that process.
Nice,
It's
Yeah,
nice.
interesting. It's interesting work, actually. It's much more interesting than I thought it would be.
oh,
Uh,
absolutely. Sounds like it.
Yeah.
yeah.
So through Puppet Heap, you got to design the lead character Walter for the 2011 Muppets movie with Jason Segel. What was designing him like?
Uh, that was like an undesign, that one. It was sort of like, it was a very interesting assignment, because like in the original script, the character of Walter was supposed to be like Jason Segel's ventriloquist dummy. Like they would do a ventriloquist act, and he was supposed to be like a ventriloquist dummy, which was not an idea that flew very well with Disney. And also that, you know, the concept of like that Walter is a puppet. The Muppets don't know they're puppets, right? They're not puppets. They're characters that like live in our world and walk among us. So so to be self-conscious of the fact that you're a puppet wasn't really working in the story. But so after some discussion, it was hit upon. It's like, okay, so he's a Muppet and he really wants to be a Muppet. He wants to be, because before it was a ventriloquist dummy who wants to be a Muppet. And that was like creepy and weird. So now it's like, what's he going to be? Well, he's going to be Jason Segel's brother, and he's just going to happen to be a Muppet. Okay. So I wanted to really sort of keep that idea, though, and not abandon it entirely. So I try to design something that was like the quintessential Muppet, like something that's like Kermit or like one of the early Muppets, you know, like not too over designed and not too many features, you know, just a very simple character. So like the prototypical Muppet. So that design that we eventually hit upon a good one. There weren't that many sort of structural ideas, but both Jason Segel and the director James Bobin are very detail oriented. So even though the character was very simple, we went through lots of iterations with like, what color is his hair? Does he have this much hair or this much hair? Or like how are his eyes oriented? Are they this close together or are they that far apart? It was like hundreds of drawings of just like moving these features around.
Yeah.
Get it like just right. And then the details of his clothing and how does he emote? And then he had to whistle at some point. So we had to like work on like, how's he going to whistle? So it was a lot of iterations until they landed on something that they felt like that was going to resonate, you know. But Peter did a fantastic job with it.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, he is actually performed. It's kind of just by chance, but it's kind of funny to that he worked on that because he did Tutter as well.
Right.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Nice. I love that film. So
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
And now Walter's so great. You know what Peter Lance has done with Walter. Oh my gosh, such a amazing
Yeah.
performer
He's
too.
a great guy. We've had him on.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Such a down to earth person.
And we've had his wife Alice Deneen on too. Like they're just
great.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolute delights, the both of them.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
The weird story about Walter, though, which came to my attention just recently. A friend of mine, David Valentine, who's also a freelance puppet artist.
Oh yeah.
You know him?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. He was working on some puppet refurbs and things like that for some Jim Henson legacy puppets for the Museum of the Moving Image in New York. And he came across a pattern for Nigel. And you know, like Nigel, he's the pit conductor in the Muppet Show. He's that, you know. So he opens the envelope and takes out the pattern, and the name on the pattern is Walter. And so Nigel's original name was Walter. And it's weird because Nigel's a very similar puppet to Walter. Like he's the same color, he's the same. And I don't know if Jason Segel knows this story or not. I don't know anybody who actually knew that. So it's just a weird coincidence. It was weird.
There you go, Muppet Wiki. There's an edit for you.
Yeah.
Weird
trivia
for you.
Mark it off.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
That's cool though. Wow, I had no idea.
Oh.
Yeah, interesting.
Absolutely. So now you also got to work as a workshop supervisor on Muppets Now and Muppets Haunted Mansion. Can you describe what a workshop supervisor does and what was that experience like doing those?
Well, the term workshop supervisor as it applies to me, is basically I'm running the shop here in Hoboken that's building all the Muppets. So that's the workshop supervisor. But there's also the title is also used for the person who is on set supervising the little workshop that they have on set, where they fix things and set the puppets up and dress them and things like that for the next shot or as they're needed. So so my role is really as the supervisor here on the East Coast, sort of supervising the initial build of all the assets and the design of everything, and then it all gets sent over to production. So working on Muppets Now, which actually for at least half of Muppets Now, we did it during the pandemic. So that was a really challenging
Yeah.
thing to do.
Because they had those like shots that were actually done from like the puppeteers' homes in this series.
Yeah.
That's what I remember of that.
Yeah.
Really did a good job because they would make these little packages of like a cell phone with software loaded onto it, and then and all the cabling and instructions and everything, and they would send it to the puppeteers and tell them how they needed to be hooked up, and then they would send it all back for them to edit. So yeah, it was a very interesting time. But yeah, so yeah, so that's for Muppets Haunted Mansion. You know, I was supervising that along with my general manager Dan Martin and our Muppet supervisor Danielle Obinger. You know, we work as a team and sort of make sure that all of the details are covered and that the production has everything it needs. And that's very often a moving target, you know, because they're writing the script and developing the show as they go along, but we need time to build stuff. So a lot of the time, those two things overlap. And it's quite a lot to keep up with. So those guys do quite a bit to keep us on track as well.
Nice.
It certainly sounds like it. So recently, you designed the character Penny Waxman for the Emmy Award-winning Disney Plus series Muppets Mayhem.
That's
phenomenal series, by the way.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yes, love that series.
What was it like
too.
designing her?
Well, it was tricky actually in the beginning because I started that work long before it was really before the production was really up and running, and there were some legal issues that had to do with the writers' unions and things like that. So a lot of the early design work I did, they couldn't use for legal reasons because I was talking to the writers and things like that. So I had to then redesign it after working on it for a while. But it worked out pretty well because I think the second design was much better than the first design. So I think it came out much better. Did a bunch of iterations for that. So it was, what was it like working on it? I don't know, it was a lot of phone calls, a lot of questions about, the one of the big things in the script was that she was really fat, and they were like, well, is that something do we really want to make a female character who's really fat, or are we body shaming her or whatever? But once all those things went aside and we started, I was really inspired by looking at images of Iris Apfel, who's
okay.
a fashion designer.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it was mainly we want to do lots of jewelry, and big moo-moos turned out to be a big thing. We made a lot of moo-moos for her. Yeah, it was fun. It was really fun to work on.
Absolutely.
And Leslie Craig Rudolph.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
She is so fun.
She is
She's
such
so
another
fun,
down
yeah.
to earth too. She's just so wonderful person and
Really
wonderful
is.
performer, not just Penny Waxman, but also Abby Gaddafi on Sesame Street, and oh my gosh,
And Tango.
so many
About
other
Tango.
things.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, Tango too.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
as we're kind of getting close to wrapping up here, at least that you're allowed to share, could you share any projects that you're currently working on with Puppet Heap?
Or anything in general.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of shared this character with you. You should
Oh yeah.
the current project that we're working on here is the Heap.
Mm-hmm.
You can see him online too. And this is his. This is
Nice.
head.
So great.
Yep. I love
And
it.
it kind of goes, kind of fits on here like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he is something that I have been wanting to work on for like 30 years. And it's just, you can see that, okay, so there's nothing here. Imagine there are huge buildings on here. And that he's just carrying this massive load, which is actually a small village on his back. And that's where the stories he tells unfold. So our name of our company is Puppet Heap, and he's simply called the Heap, right? So that's what we call him. And he's this walk around character, and he's this very old man, hunched under the weight of all the things he carries on his back, all the things he's collected over the years. And they're not just things, they're sort of people and places and worries and regrets and memories, terrible jokes, all of these things he just carries with him. And these things make up a kind of village on his back. These are where the stories he tells sort of play out. So he's like a walking puppet theater. I'm hoping, what we're hoping for is that he becomes the framework for all the stories Puppet Heap will have to tell. So when we make more films in the future, or when we work with animators or other maybe podcasts or books that we write, it's all sort of come from the Heap, right? They come from the Heap. So, we started touring him around locally. And
Awesome.
we hope to tour him around the world eventually. My partner, Cindy, who you've spoken to, has really been spearheading that aspect of the project.
Too.
Yeah, so she saw a lot of potential in this idea and has really encouraged me to push ahead with it. I've always been sort of afraid of it because I felt like it's never going to be right. I'm going to go broke doing this thing, but it's been working out great, and the response has been really good. So it's just a real joy to get it out of it and see it develop on its own. So it's very exciting. And we'll be appearing at Pictoplasma. Do you know Pictoplasma? Do you know this character design conference?
No.
You should find out
No.
about it. It's very, very cool. Like it's coming out of Berlin, and it's like a art conference that focuses on character designers. So they talk to animators and they talk to toy designers and all sorts of interesting people. They have a show in New York at the School of Visual Arts in September.
Oh, nice.
Awesome.
September 19th to the 20th.
Nice.
And the Heap will be there, and I'll be speaking there, and so it's great. It's very exciting. So that's the project that I'm really excited about right now.
Nice.
That's
Awesome.
wonderful. I'm looking forward for more of that and the rest
Yeah.
of
Well, keep an eye out on our website, and we'll keep posting stuff, and we're putting stuff on our social media all the time. So
Nice.
Awesome. Looking forward to them.
So to wrap this up, this last question that Jake's about to ask is a question we ask all of our guests at the end. Go ahead, Jake.
Thank you, Chris. Of course, this podcast is called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. When you think of nostalgia, what do you think of? In your own words, how would you define the word nostalgia?
Oh. Um. Well. Well, Jake, I'm less. I think the word nostalgia is less happy than you probably do. So, I mean, I would say nostalgia is like a sad grasping at things that never really were. It's like when we have nostalgia for something, it's like a simulation of the past. When we try to we pretend we try to bring it back, to reenact it, and we call it a memory, and we all do this. Everybody does this, and it's this kind of attachment that we feel very deeply about, but it's kind of causes you pain, like it's kind of like when you really want something, you kind of have a pain about it,
Yeah.
It's like a joy, and it's an addiction, and it's like an illusion. It's like the term, like hyper reality, but in the form of a memory. And it traps us into thinking there were better times than this. And it's a terrible distraction because it keeps us from engaging in the world that's in front of us. It keeps us from seeing what's happening right now. It's like we're stuck in a fiction, and it causes us to make bad decisions, and it causes us, like I said, it causes a lot of pain, causes us to make bad decisions. It's like it's really what I'm trying to get at with the Heap character, because this is a guy who finds himself. I mean, his story is he finds himself in a world destroyed by a great flood, and here he is trying to pick up the pieces and rescue it all from being lost forever. So he's trying to put the world back together again. But it's the kind of a false heroism, because he never really knew the world in the first place. He's just driven by this relentless nostalgia, right? This urge to restore it. And his attachment to this past is literally breaking him. So, but don't worry. I have seen his future, and he will one day wake up and be free.
Yes, great words to end on. Well, Paul, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was a blast.
Oh, this is great. Thanks for having me on the show. This was a lot of fun.
Of course, absolutely, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for what you've done over the years. What you've done, involvements and everything with Henson, and for what you've done, be part of our lives. It means very much. For design, all those things, it makes us love the characters that you design, which really appreciate what you've done. And can I keep the great work you're doing now with Puppet Heap and everything else? And can I wait what's next in store?
Thank you. Thanks.
Yes.
Well, it means you guys. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. Enjoy the rest of your day, Paul.
Of course. Take care.
All right, you too.
Paul, thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Go online.
Yes. Absolutely. It's goodbye from us as well. We absolutely enjoyed our time with the wonderful Paul Andrejco. Links to Puppet Heap's website and social media will be in the description down below for anyone who wants to connect with Paul or check out Puppet Heap's work or connect with them as well. But it's goodbye from us as well. Keep on the lookout for more wonderful interviews coming your way. And as always, what do we say, Jake?
Keep nostalgia alive. Take care, everyone. See you next time. Take care. Bye.
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 Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode. Be sure to follow Jake and the Happy Nostalgia team on social media, check out our website, and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.